Hey everyone, good morning. This is Angelica with OneSource. I'm here to go over your virtual IOP group with you for week one, day one. This will cover our first hour of group, going over risky substance using behaviors. So we'll do a quick little check-in, and then we'll start reviewing some of the reasons why people start using and at what point drug use turns into drug addiction. So, if you're like me, you're probably super sleepy right now. And one way that I like to wake my brain up is by going over riddles. So I put three down here. I ask that you don't Google, because then it takes away from the satisfaction of figuring it out. We'll have 5 minutes after I finish reading these out, but I'm going to read them for those of you who might have trouble seeing the TV screen and who might need a little more processing. The first one is I saw a boat full of people, yet there wasn't a single person on the boat. How is that possible? All right, that's number one. Number two is what has 10 letters and starts with gas? All right. And number three is what goes up but never comes down? All right, those are your three riddles. You have 5 minutes. Go. Okay, hope that you were able to put some thought into that and came out with some cool answers. I've got the right answers listed here. So for number one, the riddle about there was a boat full of people, but there wasn't a single person on there. Everyone on the boat was married, so there were no single people because everyone had a ring on it. For the second one, what has 10 letters and starts with gas? It's an automobile. I guess if you said car, sure, but that doesn't have 10 letters, so do with that what you will. And for the last one, what goes up and never comes down, and that's your age, because everyone's age just keeps going up, and we are not Benjamin Button, so we do not age backwards. I hope that was a little fun and that you're feeling a little more alert and tuned in now. We'll get into the nitty gritty of the group. So, generally, substance abuse, point blank period, is medically discouraged. The drugs that we talk about in here are mood and mind altering drugs. So, these are substances that affect, the way you feel, how you think, as well as have different effects on the body. That's like a different group later down the line where we'll go over like how each substance does affect the body. But keeping that in mind, I know some of you have already experienced these changes. Um, there are a bunch of different reasons why people start using, um, even though it is super discouraged. Whatever that reason might be. Maybe you came from a family where substance abuse was the norm, so it just seemed like the rational, logical thing to do. Maybe you started in college, and it was more of like a social thing. Maybe started even younger than college and you were trying to like fit in or be cool with whatever group of people you were hanging out with. Or maybe you were prescribed pain meds and no one really gave you proper education for it, so you started feeling sick after the meds. I'd like to take a couple minutes to sit and think and reflect on the first time you had used. Like, what was going on there? What was your intent? Because it wasn't to become addicted to whatever substance you were using. So, what was the purpose of that first use? Take like, I don't know, between 5 and 10 minutes. When my voice comes back on, then you'll know it's time to start getting into gear again. But whether you're just reflecting on it in your head or if you want to take a second to write it down, either on your reflection sheet or in a notebook, however you need to process that, take the time to do it. Hey, we're back, y'all. I hope that period of reflection was helpful, insightful, in trying to, go back to what the original idea behind using was, whether it was just to get high, whether it was to fit in socially, whatever that intent was, identifying that is pretty key, and then figuring out at what point it got out of hand. At what point did it become less for fun and more, I don't know how to handle my emotions or my trauma, so I will use to numb or forget it. Like at what point did it become, oh, I'm feeling sick, so I need to use to avoid that sick feeling. Figuring that out goes into step one of the NA program. It's we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. Powerlessness and unmanageability are at the heart of the definition of substance use disorder from a clinical standpoint. So when you're coming into treatment, we look at different areas where your life has become dysfunctional, whether that be social, whether that be with employment, housing, basically looking at how the drug use has affected your life. It might have started out in like a quote unquote like functional addict position where you're able to kind of hold things down on the outside, but the drug still had control over your life. Like you needed it to get through the day. We're going to go over some of the consequences of that on the next couple of slides. So we will go ahead and do that now. So the best analogy for substance use is a roller coaster. You know, it's got all of those hills, it's got some valleys, it's got some loop-de-loops. And as, you know, you're navigating that, you might start out on the high, like going back to what the initial intent was. You know, it felt good to have something in common with a group of people, or maybe just the drug itself made you feel so good, like nothing else mattered at that point. When you came down from that high, there were all of these consequences that started coming in, and that's where you would see the dysfunction come up in your life. And then it became a cycle of trying to get that high to, you know, either escape the consequences, forget the consequences, or just to feel good again, but then coming back down with even more consequences. The picture on here has a bunch of them listed. I've put them off to the side because I know it's kind of hard to see. I'm going to read them out, and you can just like write down or check off the ones that you have experienced in your life. We'll do this over 2 slides, but I'll start here now. First one is memory loss, unpaid bills, sexual affairs. I would also throw in risky sex behaviors like having unprotected sex, or having sex with, you know, multiple different partners in a short period of time. Family arguments, embarrassing situations, traffic tickets, blow-ups with friends, problems at work, DUI, making accusations, growing anxiety, feeling misunderstood, and always playing catch up. I'll pause here for a minute or two for those of you who are writing down the different consequences that you've experienced, and then we will go on to the next one. Alrighty, same deal here. I'll read out the consequences that are listed on the picture. This is the second half of them, and then we'll take a minute or two for y'all to write them down if that is what you want to do. So the first one on here is fear of detection. So like fear of people finding out what you're using or how much you're using. We got feelings of shame, self-doubt, loss of temper, losing social interest, blaming others, broken promises, feeling isolated, resenting others, emotional outbursts, gaining or losing weight, self-pity, and sleeplessness. There are also a couple of boxes on the sheet, I don't know if you can see them, but where you could write in your own consequences if it's not listed here, if it's something that's important to you and your experience. Again, I'll give us like a minute or two for those of you who are writing stuff down, just to give us some time to process this as well. Okay, so while the last two slides went over consequences of drug use, here over the next two slides, I'm going to go over like the official clinical definitions for substance use disorder. So there are 11 little points here. Again, I've written them out so you can see them more easily than on that picture that I have off to the side. But generally, the more of these that are checked off, the more severe the substance use disorder. So we'll do the same thing we did last time where I'll read them off. You take a second to like check them off. On here, it's yes or no. So you can do that here. If you need more time to write them down, I will leave a bigger gap at the end of each of these next two slides. But the first criteria for the official clinical stuff definition of substance use disorder is I often use more drugs for longer periods of time than I intend. The second is I'm falling short on my responsibilities at work, school, or home, but continue to use anyway. 3, my use of drugs has put me in dangerous or risky situations. 4, when I try to cut back, I become physically sick or I have to use again to avoid feeling sick. 5, I spend a lot of time in activities centered around drugs or recovering from them. So again, we'll take a couple minutes. You can write them down, check them off, reflect on it, do what you need to do, and I will continue with the last of the criteria after that. Okie dokie. I hope that was enough time. I hope these slides get posted somewhere so you can revisit them, but if not, we'll figure something out. But these are the last 6 of the criteria for the official like clinical diagnosis definitions of substance abuse. Number 6, I continue to use even though it is causing problems with my friends and family. 7, I continue to use even though my use is harming my physical or emotional health. 8, I have cravings, powerful desires, or urges to use drugs. 9, I have a persistent need for drugs or tried unsuccessfully to cut down or quit. 10, I have stopped doing things I used to do for work or fun because of my use of drugs. 11, I have to use more to get the same effect. I want to put in as an aside here as well. On the sheet, it says alcohol/other drugs, but we all know alcohol is a drug, period. So I shortened it to just drugs here. But bearing in mind as we're going through these criteria, alcohol is included in that as well. I'll give you some extra time to write down whatever you need to write down or reflect however you would like to reflect on this, and we'll meet back in a couple of minutes. Okay, again, I hope the reflections were fairly helpful for you in terms of gaining insight into more of the behaviors and consequences and just different things that you have experienced as you've navigated this process of addiction and recovery. That stuff can be pretty heavy. So I want to take a moment to just like center and breathe. It's been a while since we've turned our brains on at the beginning. So let's sit. If you are able to put your feet on the floor, that would be super helpful. Try to keep your back as straight as it'll go. And just take some breaths. They don't have to be super deep breaths. You can just breathe as you normally would. But as you're breathing, notice where the air is moving through your body. Is it coming in from your nose or maybe from your mouth? And where does it go from there? Where are you feeling that air move in? And then how do you feel it's come out? As you're breathing, notice what else you're feeling in your body. Is there any tension? Is there any discomfort? Are you feeling calm anywhere? Is anything feeling particularly loose? Take note of everything that's going on. Feed into that calm, loose energy if you have it. And if you don't, no worries. Do what you can now to start alleviating some of that tension and discomfort. Maybe you got to wiggle around in your chair or on your bed just to get on the sit bones right. Or maybe you need to like hike your shoulders up and then push them down and back. We'll take a minute for that and then regroup. Don't forget to breathe. Okay, so we're going to move on from the breathing exercise, but please keep breathing. Don't die on me. I will also try to remember to keep breathing. We've hopefully got a sense of calm in our bodies, at least a lighter sense than before the breathing exercise. And we also have all of this insight from the reflections that we've been doing throughout our time together. But what the heck are we supposed to do with this insight? Like, why did Angelica have me sit here and think and write stuff down, especially all of the bad crap that I'm trying to like move on from or forget? I have an answer for that. The purpose of insight is to get to more of the root of the problem. And I know y'all are coming from PHP and you're like, ugh, I've already done all of this in PHP, but let's start IOP off on the right foot. What do we do with all this insight? You feel the feelings that come with it, whatever it may be now. It'll be different from when you first came into treatment, I can tell you that much. Maybe it's the same kinds of emotions, but less intense now. Or maybe as you've been exploring, those feelings have only gotten more intense. Whatever it is you're feeling, whether it's guilt or shame, maybe nostalgia, maybe pride at how far you've come, maybe even excitement for whatever's coming next, take the time to feel it. And once you feel it, make sure you express it, whether that be venting to a peer or to a counselor or to a sponsor, whether that be drawing it out, doing something paint-wise with Simone, whether it be finding a song that just speaks to exactly how you're feeling right now in this moment. Don't just let the emotion overtake you. Once you express the feeling, part of it will be released. And from there, you'll be able to work through it. Whether that is going to do like a favorite hobby, whether that is coming to even deeper insights about where you are right now. Whatever it is to help make that feeling productive, that's where you work through it. The key way to do that is to game plan. That's why the counselors are here. That's why the groups are here. Really is to sit down and figure out how can we keep you clean? Whether that's finding more coping skills. You know, we can sit and talk about anxiety management, emotional regulations, all of those tools can come in for, managing cravings as well. Whether that is community supports. Maybe one source doesn't have all of the resources you need. Maybe we need to bring in a skill builder. Maybe we need to bring in a medical doctor or a psychiatrist or some other kind of specialty doctor for whatever's going on with you. Maybe that looks like employment. Maybe that looks like housing. Maybe that looks like family reunification. Whatever is out in the community outside of these walls that will help you in your recovery, this is the place to figure out what that is and how to get a hold of it. And then the last thing we want to do is just foster continued awareness. You know, all of that bad crap happened, but it happened to bring you here. So we don't want to just throw it out or forget it or write it off. Remembering how bad things got is a lot of the time stuff that helps keep people clean and in the program as well. So, all of that to say, I'm glad you're here and that you sat through my little presentation for you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that this was helpful. And I will be speaking at you soon enough. Thanks, guys.